Hi everyone, and welcome to the video lecture on how to set up the awesome workshop using Docker. So for most of you, you have a certain computing account and you have access to LX Plus or some other CVMFS mounted machine. For this workshop, that's the preferred way to go about things. It's going to be easy for all of us to be as consistent as possible when we're helping you debug code. But Docker is a totally acceptable way to go about running this code. So the reason we need Docker is that we need to be able to run root. The code you download is going to be dependent on root version 6.16 or later. And some of you might already have root installed on your laptop. I know I do. So if I do which root, it looks like I have root installed and I can check the version. However, my root version is 5.34, so it's not high enough in order to actually execute the code for this workshop. So what Docker is going to allow us to do is download a checkout of root and run it despite the fact that we don't have root installed on our laptop because it's being running in a virtual environment. Okay, so that's a little bit of the introduction about why we need Docker. Let's get started by running this first bash command in order to just download the files that we need. So I'm going to run this curl command. This should download master.zip, so let's double check that. Okay, it looks like we have that, and let's unzip the file and cd into the area. So you should see all these files present. And now let's get around to actually using Docker, since we've downloaded files, but we actually can't run them since we don't have the right root version. So the first thing you need to do is make sure Docker is set up on your laptop, and you can follow the instructions for your operating system that are provided. Once you have Docker, just test it out by running something like docker image ls. Now, I purposefully set us up to fail here because my Docker is not running. So you just need your socket to be open. The way you do this is just by running the Docker application. So I'm just going to run Docker here real quick. Okay, what that just did is it opened up the Docker application and it's running in the background now. It'll take just a minute to start up, but if I scroll up in my command line and I rerun docker image ls, after a moment it should return all the images that I've downloaded. As you can see, I've already downloaded root project. It's rather large, so it takes a couple minutes, but that gets downloaded automatically the first time you execute this docker run command over here in the web browser. So you should see no output here, and that's totally fine. It's going to be downloaded the first time you run the command. Now, let's start typing out this docker run command, and as we go, I'll explain what all the different command line arguments mean. So we want to be able to run an image, so let's just type docker run. Now -it makes the container that we create from this image an interactive environment. So this allows us to run bash commands instead of just running and then exiting. Once we're finished working inside of our container, we're going to delete it so that we don't have containers piling up on one another. So that's what --rm is going to do. Now we also, inside our container, want to have access to the files we just downloaded in payload master. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the working directory, pwd, and map it with this colon onto some new directory called analysis. And we also want to have write access to analysis. So that's what this -w command is going to do. Okay, next we need to specify which project we actually want to run. We want to run, that's root, and that is this root project here. And then finally, bin bash is telling the interactive Docker that we want to be able to run bash commands in this interactive session. It looks like I had an error here because I just forgot -v. So let me add that and run again. So now I have a new command line prompt, as you'll see. And if I do pwd, my working directory is called analysis. And that's part of what we did with the volume mount, is we created this area called analysis in our virtual environment. And if I ls, I see all of the files that I downloaded in payload master. So payload master, in this new environment, we've renamed it to analysis. And we actually have write access in this area. So if I just do something silly like touch a new file, this will get created both in the virtual environment. You can see test is here. But then also if I exit out and go back to my regular old computer, you can see I'm again in users Kevin now. If I do an ls, I also see test.txt. So this is what the write option gives you in Docker, is the ability to have files written in the virtual environment show up back in your regular laptop. Now there's a few last things we should mention, one of which is that while you can create new files in your virtual environment, by default your favorite text editor might not be there. So if I open up the virtual environment again, I can certainly look at the contents of files like skim.csv, but I might not be able to edit them using my favorite editor. For me, it's Emacs. So if I Emacs skim.csv, Emacs is not installed in this environment. Now, there's certainly workarounds. You can still modify files. We already showed that you can modify text.txt. You can still cat files, but it's going to be pretty laborsome to try and edit in Docker. Now, you can Google and figure out exactly how to get Emacs or Vim in your Docker image. I think the easiest thing for you to do is going to just be to exit out, to go back to your computer and do any writing of files out here. So now I can Emacs skim.csv, I can add a line to it, another skimming file 1.0. I'll write that out, and then I'm going to open up my Docker image again. And this time, if I'm more skim.csv, I see those edits. So you can make edits outside of the container and then just open it back up. That's going to be the easiest way for you to probably follow along. Now, feel free to riff on top of this. If you have a preferred way of doing things in Docker, totally go for it, or just learn something new. Google, figure out how to get Docker running exactly how you want it. Now for that concludes our Docker setup. We've seen how Docker is able to give us access to root. So if I run root version in my container, I see that we've got version 6.20 inside the container, even though we have 5.34 outside on my laptop. That's everything that you should need to know in order to run the code using Docker. So at this point, contact us if you have any questions or trouble setting up Docker, and we'll see you in the next video.